I think our conversation would be richer and more informed if I told you something about my childhood there. As a little geographic reference, my grandparents' home was adjacent to the school. As a
Mhm.
matter of fact, the property, an individual purchased it, and my grandmother's home is still there. They didn't tear it down. They really refurbished it. It is palatial now, of other properties. So as a boy, when I started school at Booker T, I would go there for lunch most days. It meant running, and I figured out how to jump the fence as opposed to walking around through the gate. So that was kind of fun. And eating lunch with my grandmother, my grandfather, and then going back to Booker T. They purchased a bicycle for me. So that enabled me, as a little boy of 6 or whatever, to ride all over Jonesborough all the time on this little red bicycle. I was very observant. People knew me because Jonesborough was small, as it is right now. My father's name was Lester. Individuals that knew me, encountered me, it would be, I'm Lester Howard's boy, or this is Hattie Walker's grandson. So everybody knew me roaming around. The added piece of background is that my father picked up milk from farmers. And as you know, cows give milk every day. So he was up at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, usually leave not later than 5. So again, as a little boy, he would take me on this route. And
Mhm.
Jonesboro had a pet milk company processing plant. So
Mhm.
there were a number of individuals who picked up milk from farmers. They brought it into the plant. It was pasteurized and the cans cleaned, and then it was back to pick up milk the next day. One of the things that was very enlightening for me and it informed my education, my view of the world, we would see any number, I couldn't give you the number of farmers, 25, 30, 40 farmers that we stopped and picked up milk at. But almost invariably, certainly the larger ones, they would have us in for breakfast. They'd
Mm.
say, not each one, because we couldn't do that. He wouldn't get the work done.
Mhm.
But I remember sitting at the table of many of those farmers having breakfast, and the farmers ate very well. Scrambled eggs, bacon, biscuits, jelly. They had it
Mhm.
on the table kind of thing. But very friendly, very welcoming. And my father, his complexion, he had a dark complexion, but he had a
Mhm.
great sense of humor. And the farmers just embraced him as an individual. And growing up in Tennessee, and it's still the case in large part, people took care of each other. The race did not come into play on a day-to-day basis. It was really a sharing, a doing, and a helping kind of thing. And I remember at Christmas, he would bring countless number of mostly food gifts, items that the farmer would give him as an appreciation, so on. So that informed my work. And it let me know that yes, I was going to Booker T, but there were a lot of kids and out in the country. They were going to different schools, and but all very friendly, knowledgeable in that sense. Brother and sisters, we had Sunday dinners at my grandmother's house every Sunday, and again, it informed my education. She was born and raised in an area called New Canton. It's outside of Churchill, Kingsport, 30 miles from, it's near Rogersville. And her parents, and I have a photograph of her mother. Her name was Cornelia Galbraith. And Cornelia happened to have been a slave in her early years. And I found her on the 1880 census. Cornelia was listed as a 14-year-old mulatto, meaning that she was half white and half black. Well, my great grandparents had enough mind in themselves. By the way, my great grandfather came from Stony Point, South Carolina. How he got there, I don't know. You had to be intent on coming to Johnson City, Jonesborough on those days. You just didn't casually come through the area. But in any case, they got married. They had the good sense to send my grandmother to college. And my belief is that it was in near Rogersville, Marshtown. I don't know the exact name of the school, but there were several. She got a formal education. Ties to Booker T is that on occasion, Booker T had two teachers. They had a
Yes.
principal, and they had one teacher all the time that I knew, Mrs. Ethel Brown. And when Mrs. Brown was ill or could not make a class, my grandmother would substitute teach. So here I am sitting in class, and oh, I look up, oh, my grandmother's the teacher today. So I had to be a little more on my P's and Q's, so to speak. I really enjoyed reading. And one of my aunts, Geneva Howard, and she did graduate from college. She graduated from Knoxville College. And she was also in the Women's Army Corps. She was a
Hmm.
WAC. She observed me reading and maybe independent of that, encouraged me to read. So she told me she'd give me $1 for every book that I read. Guess
Oh,
what? I didn't need any more incentive. All I needed
that's
was
it.
that. And I read every day. I read books. I was always interested in nature and animals. And I had a keen sense of the universe, looking up in the sky for something, spaceship or something, and loved nature. I'm out in nature all the time. I'm observing all the animals from snakes to owls to whatever. So I took all that curiosity with me to school to Booker T. In Booker T, there were two classrooms. First of all, it was a very nice school, construction wise. And in my classroom, first grade, the elementary component, there were 4 rows of chairs. One row was first grade, another row was second grade, the other one third, and the other one fourth grade. So imagine the teacher having to instruct 4 different groups of kids at different grade and education levels. The thing that I remember most is how the boards were decorated. They were green boards, I think. And I remember all the letters up on top, the ABCs and the cursives. Learned those, and we did Pledge of Allegiance every day. I don't know that I remember a prayer so much, but definitely the Pledge of Allegiance. And the school has these huge windows that were
Mhm.
common in schools back in the day. And next to the school, there was it wasn't a farm, but the owners, the Broyles, what was their name? Some horses, had some horses and cows there. So I got a lot of my learning watching the hard horses and cows periodically. They were entertaining, I'll put it that way. Learning was around the basics, reading, arithmetic, maybe an introduction to science or something of that nature. And periodically, the school would have a play, and Mrs. Ethel Brown, she could play the piano. I'll be respectful. All I could see were her hands going up and down, just up and down, beating, the piano. But remember, there was a
Mhm.
nice stage, and I don't remember a lot of, we would decorate the boards depending on the season of the year. As part of science, one of the things I enjoyed doing, I did it a couple of times, catching moths. They weren't moths, they were caterpillars, and putting
Oh.
them in a jar with a little some sticks in there and some leaves. And within a and as long as they were kept warm, within a matter of a month or so, they would turn into a butterfly. That was kind of amazing for me to see that happen right before my eyes. In other words, I'd seen the butterflies, but I didn't know where they came from. There was a bookmobile that came to the school. I think the bookmobile came, let's say, maybe once a month. So imagine a big camper. And when you walked on the camper, I'm like, and it had an aisle where it had books on both sides. I'm like a kid in a candy store. Got
Yeah.
books. So I would end up with taking 7 or 8 books. Most of them evolved around science and nature. And in addition, and I don't know what this was. I thought about this, but I can't pinpoint it. There were
Hmm.
2 ladies that would come periodically, and they had more of a spiritual presence. I remember they taught us one song, and the one song I remember is He's Got the Whole World in His Hands. It's stayed with me all these years. Periodically, I may hear it, but it's not a common song in and of itself. It's talking about God and His presence and how He cared for us. There was recess twice a day. So we'd have
Hmm.
recess in the morning, recess in the afternoon. And when it was warm or weather was good, we would play softball for the most part.
Wow.
Softball, kickball, that kind of thing. There was a flag in the circular area, the parking lot. It had a circle in it where your cars came in, they turned around. Flag was raised every day as well. And cold months or winter months, we played in the gym. Mostly games of some action or activity because we had to have a way to get rid of all that energy, I guess. I lift up one individual. His name is James Scott, Mr. James Scott. As a matter of fact, he still lives in Jonesborough.
Yeah.
He started a basketball team. And I can't
Oh.
remember how old I was, but he was our coach. And I did not have any tennis shoes, as we called it then. But somewhere along the line, somebody gave me some tennis shoes. A little bit of a problem, a little small. But guess
Oh.
what? It didn't matter to me. I cleaned them. I got some white shoe polish. I put it on
Mm.
there, had them all clean and sparkling. I remember going up and down the court in those shoes. And if you can imagine, when you got shoes that fit, you really can stride. I remember doing a little because we went to Lamar, of all places, just outside of Jonesboro, to play a little team that they had at their school. But James
Yeah.
Scott was the one that organized that. At the time, my father was on the Parent Teacher Association, that there was a real focus and concentration on trying to have quality education for us. The books we had and used were secondhand books, came from Jonesboro Elementary and Jonesboro High School before we got them, but still usable. My parents lived on the other side of Jonesboro, 4th Avenue. So I would, as a boy, I was the oldest of 5, and we had a coal stove. So there was a dugout under the house. So my job was to get up and go down there, get some kindling and paper and make fire and get it going before everybody else got up. And one of the other things I did was cook breakfast. But my breakfast consisted of oatmeal for the most part.
Mm.
So we had oatmeal almost every day, but I enjoyed oatmeal and pancakes and that kind of thing. Reason why I raised that is we rode the school bus. Kids who lived in Limestone and Telford, they rode the school bus from there. It was a gentleman by the name of Mr. Rollins. We had to go down the hill, 4th Avenue, and stand there and wait for the school bus to come. We could time it pretty good, be there waiting for him. There were 3 principals that I remember. Mrs. Brown was there my entire time. Mrs. Silvers, Virginia Silvers was the principal. Mr. McKinney was the principal. And that was during the day of corporal punishment. Mr. McKinney had, I'm just going to say it out loud, he had a leather strap. All I had to do was look at that thing, and it was like man, I'm good. I'm not. And in the eighth grade, individuals would transfer to Langston High School in Johnson City. So the bus that I mentioned earlier, Mr. Rollins bringing kids up from Limestone, tell to me, he would stop at Booker T and pick up kids and take them to Langston High School, say finish eighth grade, to go into the ninth grade, etc. However, I did not get that experience. One of my grandmothers lived in Johnson City. My parents made a decision that I would stay with my grandmother in Johnson City. And I went to school at Langston in the seventh grade as opposed to the ninth grade. So it was quite a cultural shift for me. Nice, comfortable, small town to a larger town, so to speak. And sometimes the larger kids there were not as kind as the kids I knew in Jonesborough. I'll do it that way. So at Langston, I played football and played basketball. We also had a fraternity there called High Y, the Young Men's Christian Association, something like that, which is pretty nice, a little different. A little bit of hazing went on there. And Mrs. Brown, not that this is germane, but she didn't drive. So she took a cab to school in the morning and back home. And she and her mother, I think it is, who lived together. It had a coal-fired furnace, central heat. I remember some of the boys, maybe it was men who did it, but there was I don't remember a janitor. I never remember seeing adult male school during school hours. So it had to be students, yeah. One of the things, we had a cafeteria in between the two classrooms. By way of memory, the food was just great because it was home cooked. And we had bottles of milk. At that time, the milk was not homogenized, which means that the butter or the fat and the milk was blended together. That there was always about a inch or three-quarters of an inch of cream at the very top that was just very sweet and whatever, yeah. And the kids from Telford and Limestone, because many of them lived on farms. I was always try to find the right word. Maybe it's impressed with the lunches that they would bring because they were bringing, natural food and so on and so forth and whatever. And after Langston, I went to ETSU and did that for a year. This was during the Vietnam War was going on at the time. This is 1965. Wonderful academic experience there. I was in ROTC. And because of the state-supported school, we were required to take ROTC. So I had to wear a uniform on Thursdays and we drilled, we disassembled. At that time, it was an M14 weapon. We disassembled that. We learned it in and out. That's what they were using in Vietnam. Well, they started using another weapon. But that was a good experience. And it was different from school because we went through a little more hazing at ETSU. Went through hazing as a freshman. Went through hazing as a black boy at ETSU. There were some students there. It was some of them were just very outwardly, I'll use the word mean, pray for 'em, keep going kind of thing. ROTC was that was very good. It came to a point where I had to go to summer school in order to maintain my deferment because I had gotten my draft papers and they were sending thousands of men to Vietnam at that time. And I remember sitting at home when I was in school and watching TV, and pardon the expression, but all of the men who had been killed in a day, they were unloading them from what was then a large airplane, a C-130, 5, 6, 10, or whatever. And it's like, man, I don't need to be there. I don't want to be there. But I did stay. I was able to join the Air Force. So went to technical school and I became of all things, an air traffic controller. Spent 4 years in Air Force and actually had a very good time with it. Worked out well, and after I got out, I had the GI Bill, I had money, so I started schools. I graduated from school in South Carolina called Benedict College. It's in Columbia, South Carolina. Degree in business administration. And when I graduated, I actually had 7 job offers, and I actually pursued trying to get jobs with these different companies.
Mhm.
And I ended up taking a position with Ford Motor Company. Yeah, and there's the way I say it a lot is life is not a straight line. It has its twists and turns and what have you. And the thing I'd add is I did end up getting a master's degree in business administration as well. So I never had a bad experience in Jonesborough relative
Mhm.
to race. Everyone kind and friendly and respectful. Jonesboro was just kind of a special place, I think. You have to be conscious. You have to consciously be nice to people. So it's more than just knowing everybody. I mean, but you could walk around talking about, hey, John, hey, Susie, whoever. But it was that genuine feeling, affection,
Yeah.
support, etc. And you meet someone, didn't matter your race,
Mhm.
you had a personal relationship. So it was different. It was. And if you really go back into history, you'll find that there were Quakers at a point in time in Jonesboro as it was getting settled. Uh, there were interracial marriages there. So
Mhm.
Jonesboro has a little bit of a history, and it also, going back to the 1800s, had the first abolitionist newspaper against slavery. So, and because it was so difficult, I mean, people didn't get there by saying, I'm going to Jonesboro. I think relationships and that need, that interest to take care of each other,
Mhm.
support each other was a big factor in it. Yeah.